Good afternoon everybody, welcome into my craft room for the last Stampin' Chat of 2022. I can't believe that we've almost got to the end of the year. It's absolutely extraordinary. But I am very happy to have you here. Thank you for joining me. I'm Sally Bowman. My business is Handmade at Home and I do something live pretty much every Friday afternoon of the year. A little bit more on my plans for the next few weeks later, but the first thing I'm going to do is just make sure that indeed I am live. So let me just check on my iPad because you never know. I've got a little button that says yes, you're live, but sometimes it's not true. So let me just get myself up on Facebook and have a look. Here we go. Yep, and it looks as if I am live. If you're watching, it would be really helpful if you could let me know if the sound is okay, please. I would really like to know that. As you know, over the last year we've had a lot of issues with sound. The problem seems to be resolved now, but just occasionally I have to unplug and plug back in my microphone. So if you could please pop a little comment and say, yes, I can hear you loud and clear, that would be really helpful. In the meanwhile, I will just keep chatting. First of all, oh my goodness me, the weather. Oh, thank you, Mary. That's fantastic. Good to know you can hear me, and welcome to Friday afternoon. The weather, it has been so cold. I've got so many layers on, I can hardly move. I feel a bit like the Michelin Man. And I've got a blanket over my knees. It is really, really, really cold. I gather that the temperatures are supposed to go up and we're supposed to reach the heady heights of 12 or 13 degrees in the day next week, which would be pretty standard because Christmas is normally warm and often damp here rather than cold and frosty. But I, for one, will be very happy to lose this very cold weather. So yes, so that's been the main topic of conversation with everyone I've been talking to recently. Have we got enough warm clothes, and is this ever going to stop? But talking about crafting news, well, look for your new catalogue popping through your door sometime between Christmas and New Year. I'm going to take them to the post office the first working day after Christmas and get them sent off to you. I'm sincerely hoping that the Christmas backlog will be clearing by then. I've no idea what's happening with the postal strikes. I'm hoping that they will all go back to work and everything will get delivered more or less as normal. But I don't think there's any point in me posting before Christmas because there is just so much post stuck in the system that I will send them afterwards when less things generally get posted, and keep my fingers crossed that you will have them before New Year. The catalogue, oh excuse me, sorry, I'm just going to have some water. Oh, that's better. Frog in my throat. The catalogue launches on the 5th of January, so you can't order from it until then anyhow. I'll also be sending out your Celebration brochures. That's our big promotion of the year. It lasts for January and February. And the best thing about Celebration is you can get free products. So I'll talk much more about that in my next live in January. I will be sending you a Celebration brochure. All the information's in there if you don't know about it. Just consulting my notes here. Today is the last day for you to book the January Fancy Fold Cards class. That's for crafters with some experience. It's an in-person class and it runs just outside of Lymington on January the 16th. It costs you £18, and if you would like to book that class, you need to contact me today, please, to do so. Now my next live is going to be on Friday, January the 6th. So it'll be my normal day and it will be the first one after New Year, the first Friday after New Year. Ideally, I would do one on the Thursday, which is the day the new catalogue launches, but I have a class that day and it's just going to be too much to do a live as well. But I will be here on the Friday afternoon. I anticipate that being a bit longer than normal. I'm going to show you some of my favourite things from the new catalogue and do a bit of crafting as well. And finally, I am taking a break. I won't be responding to emails or messages from the 21st, which is next Wednesday, I believe. Yes, next Wednesday. So from Wednesday onwards until the the 3rd of January, because we get an extra day this year, don't we? So I will be working on the first working day back after New Year, which is the 3rd of January. So until then, if you send me an email, you'll get my out of office reply, and I promise you I will answer your email once I'm back at work in January. Usually my inbox is pretty quiet this time of the year because you've all finished your Christmas crafting and you're busy celebrating with family and friends. And I think that is everything I needed to say to you. Just check I haven't got any other comments, which I don't think I have. Okay, so I think I'm going to turn the camera down. Today I'm going to be making thank you cards. I think it's always handy to have a few thank you cards ready to go at this time of the year. With any luck, you've been very good and Father Christmas will be bringing you some presents. And it's always nice to have a thank you card ready to send out. Maureen, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. It's lovely to have you with us. All right, so I've got 3 different thank you cards to make with you. 2 of them are very quick and easy, and the other one is fairly quick and easy because I think this time of the year, although we all love crafting, we haven't necessarily got the time to spend on very fiddly or time-consuming projects. So today's projects are fairly quick and easy. You will be able to make them with whatever you've got. So I will make sure that I give you the measurements, and you will have time to cut some pieces and make along with me, or you can jot down the measurements and make them another time, or you can just come back and re-watch the video and make along with me at a time of your choosing. But for now, I'm going to cover you over with some washi tape, turn the camera down and do some crafting, because that's really what we're all here for, isn't it? Okay, now I'm hoping that I'm going to have a lot more luck with getting this in the right place this time. I didn't do very well before. I did a lot of fiddling around. I'm hoping to do better today. Let's move my lights out of the way. We've got a cable in the way there. I'll clip that back properly in a second. Right, let's get this over here and get a little bit more of the paper in. Probably needs to be straightened up. There we go. That looks better. Good. Now, I just need to clip up this lead for my microphone so that it isn't all over the desk. There we go. I have the usual problem with some reflections. I've got 2 lights today. Let's see. I'll pop 2 on, and with any luck, instead of making the reflections worse, they will kind of cancel them out. Not reflections, the shadows is what I meant. Okay, as always, I'm waiting to catch. I don't really know how much better that is. It's always hard to tell. I think that's probably better. Right. So let's get my pieces for my first card. So I'm using the Sun Prints paper for this. Patterned paper is brilliant for making cards when you don't have a lot of time. I could stamp this scene, I could stamp it on dark blue card, I could heat emboss it in white, and it would be lovely, and sometimes I do that. But for something fairly quick, I can reach for a piece of paper and all that design is done for me. I'll tell you the other bits I've got in a moment, but let me just give you the measurements of what I'm using. So my card base is my standard landscape base. So my card started out at 4 inches by 11.5 inches, and I've scored it at 5 3/4 of an inch, which gives me a card base like this. Then I have a contrast card layer, and unusually for me, I'm using white for that, to pick up the white on the paper design. So that contrast card layer is 5.5 inches by 3 3/4 of an inch. And then I've gone only 1/8 of an inch smaller on my paper. If you don't like working in 1/8 of an inch, you could make this a little bit smaller. I'll give you that in a moment. But my patterned paper is 5 3/8 of an inch by 3 5/8 of an inch. If the 1/8 of an inch are too much, then you can make this 5 1/4 by 3 1/2, and you will just have a slightly wider border like that. But I do like a really narrow border a lot of the time, which is why I work in the 1/8 of an inch. So I've got another piece of white card, the same as my contrast card layer, 5 1/2 inches by 3 3/4 of an inch. That's for my insert. I dug around in my die cut pieces box, and I've got a couple of these stitched squares. These are cut using the Stylish Shapes dies. I've got one as a spare in case I mess up. You can obviously cut those especially, and you might not want squares, you might want a different shape. It really depends which words you're using, because I'm going to stamp thank you on that. I've used my go-to greeting set, and I'm using this small thank you actually on all 3 cards, but you might have a different stamp you're using, so whatever piece of card you're going to stamp your words on obviously needs to fit your words, so you may need a different size. I've got some ribbon. This is the white seam binding ribbon, which I love. I've got a little scrappy offcut of the patterned paper to go on my insert, and I have some rhinestones. I've picked the same ink colour as my card colour, which is Night of Navy. Some more in my box here. And I've also pulled out my Nature's Print stamps. These coordinate with the paper, and I'm going to use this one just as a little bit of background on the piece of card that I'm putting my sentiment on. So I have that stamp on a block. So let's put all that out of the way. Okay, let's do some crafting. If you need the measurements back, let me know. So the first thing I'm going to do is make some space. Then I'm going to glue my patterned paper to my contrast card layer. Using this liquid glue means that I'm going to be able to slide the paper on the card. The glue grabs quickly, but it does give you a little bit of sliding time, and I can just make sure that I get that border even all the way around the outside. I haven't shown you what I'm making, have I? Do you want to see what I'm making? Let me know. Oh, so Maureen's got a visitor. Enjoy your visitor, Maureen, and of course you can catch up later. That's no problem at all. Alright, so now I'm going to tie the ribbon around those 2 layers. It's much easier to tie ribbon around card than paper, because you've got the card is that much firmer. So I usually, if I'm using paper as well, put the paper onto the card before I tie the ribbon round. And I'm going to put this down towards the bottom. My hands have not been very cooperative in this cold weather, so I'm probably going to mess up the bow, but let's try. I tie a lot of bows in a week, and normally I'm not too bad, but if my fingers are playing up, then I sometimes need some glue dots to help me with the bow. Let's see how today will go. That's not too bad. Pull that nice and tight, and I'm just going to slide this ribbon round so that bow is right over on the edge, and let's pull it a little bit because that's much too big. Got a twisted loop here. I don't know if you can see. Let's see if I can sort that out. I really want to have to tie it again. Just titivating really. I'm just tweaking the loops and the ends to try to get that bow the right size for what I want. And now I'm going to trim the ends off, and I'm probably going to pop a glue dot underneath it just to keep it where I want it. My glue dots, and I'm just going to pick one up with my scissors tuck it underneath the bow and then just press that bow on top of the glue dot at the angle that I want it. There we are, and now that will stay in place. You can't see the glue dot, and it'll be exactly where I want it. So now I just need to glue that onto my card base. Is anybody crafting along with me? Let me know. Now, if you needed a thank you card to send to a chap, then of course you could leave off the bow, just have the paper and the card, and this makes a really nice masculine card. And if you're in need of a birthday card for a man, then same again, leave off the bow, and obviously just use a different sentiment on here. All right, let's bring in my stamps. So this is my Night of Navy ink pad, and this is my kind of grasses and flowers stamp. Now I actually want this paler than it's going to come out, so I'm going to stamp off at least once. Let me just stamp off a second time and have a look and see how dark that is. Yeah, I'm going to stamp off twice, so I'm going to re-ink it, so I'm controlling the amount of ink, and stamp off once and twice. And now I'm just going to pop this onto my die cut. And I've got the image, but much more toned down, so it's not going to fight so much with the words. And then I shall stamp the words in the bottom corner. Obviously, if you have different stamps, then you may have a rectangle of card. For this, you might want a circle. You might punch or die cut a label shape. It just depends which stamps you're using. So that's going to go there, but I think I want some dimensionals if I can find them. I've got a feeling I put them in one of my, yes I did, one of my little buckets here. So are you ready for Christmas? I did get all my cards made and sent last week, thank goodness. That was a big relief off my mind. I finished the Christmas shopping. I've got quite a lot of wrapping to do, but that's okay. I've got time to do that. I like Christmas wrapping anyway, so I never mind doing that. We're putting up the tree this weekend. We have got it. There are only 3 left to choose from in the size that we like, so as always everybody's bought trees really early, but we never put ours up until about a week before Christmas, so we don't get it too early, otherwise it's just sitting somewhere in the way. Right, so I've got some little tiny rhinestones here. I'm just going to scatter a few around. I haven't really planned where I'm going to put them. Ooh, that moved as I put it down. I wanted a little bit more distance there. There we are. Let's just put one on the paper as well, just to kind of make it all part of the same rather than have the paper as a kind of a separate thing. So let me lift that up and show you, and then I've just got the insert left to do. I like that, needs a little bit more light on it. Let's see if I can give you a better picture. There we go. All right, so my insert then is, I'm not going to stamp it because I want some space to write down what I'm saying thank you for. But I have got, I don't know which way up this goes, that way I think. Just this little scrap of paper. I keep all those little strips you get when you're cutting your larger layers, because they are so nice to have to pop onto the insert. Often they don't even need trimming down in width, they just need the length sorting out. So I don't know what this one was, about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more, but it was just a scrap I had in my box. There we are. So that's my finished card number 1. Let's lift that up one more time for you to see. And I'll just clear the decks a little bit and bring in some more things to make another one. I do need to clean my stamps because I'm going to use that same thank you stamp on the next card. So let's get that navy ink off it, and while I'm at it I'll clean that one as well. Alright, so I have some parakeet party pieces of card here. Just trying to find the measurements. There they are. I'll run through the measurements in a moment. But yes, parakeet party card. I love this colour, but it is very, very bright. A little bit too bright sometimes. But I find that if you tone it down with other colours, it can be absolutely perfect to just give you a little pop of colour. So for instance, if I add this black and white paper over the top, then it just becomes really interesting. Whereas like that, it's perhaps just a little bit too bright. So my card base is a standard portrait orientation card base. My card was 8 inches by 5 3/4 inch. I've scored it at 4 inches here, just straight down the middle. So I've got 2 designs of patterned paper. They're both from the Perfectly Penciled paper pack, if I say that slowly and carefully. So this one has got polka dots on the one side, the other side it's got florals. It's a really interesting paper pack. I like the black and white because I can add colour to it if I want, but it can also be used just as it is, which is what I'm doing today. And one side has got various patterns on it, and the other side has got florals on it. So if you're looking for florals, it's lovely. If you're looking for more gender neutral designs, you've got those as well. One side has got quite a lot of black on it. The other side you can add a lot of colour to, so it's great paper. So that piece of paper is 5.5 inches by 3 3/4 inch, and that's the same size as my insert for inside. Then I've got another design of paper, and I've got some contrast card. So that contrast card is 3.5 inches by 2 1/4 inches. And my other design of patterned paper is 3 3/4 inch by 2 inches. So yes, it is bigger than the card. And then I've got some card in both basic white and parakeet party for my sentiment. The sizes you'll need depend on which sentiment you're using. I'm going to use that same thank you from Go To Greetings. So my white card is 1/2 inch wide, and I've gone a little bit smaller on the contrast parakeet party card. That measures 3/8 inch. And then I have, what are these called? Classic matte dots. I've got some black ones. They come in a pack with basic grey, very vanilla, and basic white, as well as the black, in 2 sizes. They're actually really useful. They're quite small, and they just give you a little something without being all sparkly and blingy, because I'm a great lover of bling, but sometimes you actually don't want it. So let me get started on this. I said it was simple cards today, and they really are simple. So once you've cut your pieces for this card, it's just a matter of gluing everything together. There's a single stamped image, which is the words, and then your card is done. But I think because you've got this pop of colour, it actually looks like a more detailed card than it really is. And this is the kind of card that I would probably cut 4 or 6 sets of all the pieces for, and sit down and make several cards at a time. It really does lend itself to that. So I'm going to lay this paper on top of the card like that. So it's going, the coloured card is going to extend out at the sides, but not top and bottom. It's just a slightly different look. I'm very used to cutting my card so that there's a coloured card border showing all the way round on all 4 sides, but this is just a little bit different. Straight. I don't think it's quite straight. There we are, that's better. I'm going to cough, sorry. Oh, you have some more water. Okay. So I'm going to pop this slightly above the centre and slightly towards the left of centre. So I could put it right in the middle like that, but I quite like it to be slightly more asymmetric. Now the spots are sort of in a line, but not completely. They're not there. They're irregular. So I'm using my grid paper rather than the lines of spots just to line this up. Otherwise, it's going to be on the skew. So that, other than the sentiment, is my card front done. Let me bring in my white card. I've got a Memento Tuxedo black ink pad here. Ink up my stamp. And there we go. So I'm going to trim this down. It's a little bit long. If it was a wider strip, I would definitely use my trimmer. But even I think, can manage to just trim this down using my scissors. And then I'm going to bring in my contrast card strip and glue the two together. I've just put glue down the centre of my word piece, and I'm going to stick that on there and then trim the green so there is just a little bit showing at each end. I think I've got that on there quite straight. Let's just slide that a little bit. And then I want some dimensionals on the back of that, just for a little bit of added interest. And I'll pop some of these little black dots on. So whatever kind of patterned paper you have, you can cut it and use it for this card. Just cut your pieces the same size and pick 2 of the patterns in your pack. They will coordinate beautifully and look wonderful. So I could have done this with the Sunprints paper that I've already used, or with anything else in my craft room. So having a sketch like this, a design plan, I think is really helpful for making cards, because I can do this card again and again and again in different colours with different patterns. And I haven't got to sit down and find the time to redesign it. I can just follow on from what I did, but my project will look completely different. So I have another scrappy strip of paper. This measures, it's a little bit over 1/2 inch wide. 1/2 inch would be absolutely fine. But this again was an offcut from when I was cutting some paper. So I just keep these narrow strips and then I just cut them to length to go on my inserts. I hate throwing patterned paper away. I don't mind so much throwing away little thin strips of card, but I really don't like throwing away patterned paper. So it's always nice if I can use them up. And once again, I'm not going to stamp on this because I want some space to write my thanks inside. There we are. So I've added those matte dots here. They just add a little bit of contrast. Bring that back a bit, won't I, just so you can see it all. There we go. Shine that light a little bit better on there for you. Just make sure you can see it. So I'm not a great monochrome person. I love colour, but I do like black and white with a pop of colour, so I'm pleased with that one. I'm going to clean my stamp again, because I'm going to use it on the final project. This hour always goes so fast. I think it's the quickest hour of the week. This one, I've got a kind of a diagram with the measurements. I thought that might be easier. I don't know if it is. If it's not, my apologies. I'll go through them with you. Alright, so my card base is the same as the last one actually. It's 8 inches by 5 3/4 inch, scored at 4 inches. And then I have a piece of card here. This could be patterned paper. I've chosen to use card for a change, which I've embossed using the Time Worn Type embossing folder, which is one of my absolute favourites. That's not very good, is it? Let's try that. Let's change the lighting for you. There we go. That's a bit better. Lighting is so tricky this time of the year. So I've embossed that. This card is crumb cake, and the paper I'm using is from the Abigail Rose pack, and I've used a pattern that's got tulips on it. And I'll come on to the paper in a minute because I'm doing some colouring on this. So that piece of patterned paper here is 4 by 2.5 inches, and I'm going to mount it on a piece of card that's just a little bit bigger. It's early espresso card. And that card is 4 1/8 inch by 2 5/8 inch. I've also got a really narrow strip of early espresso card, which is going to go down here, which is this piece on here. So this is 1/8 inch by 5 3/4 inch. I could have cut a layer that went all the way behind this, but the only bit I want to see is this little bit here, so I've just cut a really narrow layer, which is straightforward to do if you've got a decent trimmer. My Stampin' Up trimmer will cut an 1/8 inch strip effortlessly, so that was no problem. And then the sentiment piece here, again, I haven't given you a measurement for because it will depend on what you're using. I'm using, yet again, my thank you from Go To Greetings. So I have some white card here, which measures 1/2 inch wide. And then I have another offcut of the tulip paper just to go inside on my insert. And my insert is 5, that's not on there, is it? 5.5 inches by 3 3/4 inch. Let's pop this on here. 5.5 inches by 3 3/4 of an inch. So that is the measurements for those. So here are the pieces. Now I said I'd talk to you a little bit more about the paper. So the paper has a background with like a script font printed on it, some writing. The background is early espresso. Then there is crumb cake over the top. And these tulips printed in early espresso, and they're beautiful. They're lovely, just left plain white. But I thought I would colour them on this just to make a change. So I've used my stamping blends. I've coloured the leaves using soft succulent, dark and light. And I have petal pink here, dark and light. Petal pink is the same colour as my card base. And I have coloured most of this because I think colouring is lovely to do, but you don't necessarily want to watch somebody doing lots of it. So I have coloured most of this. I've just left a couple of flowers just so I could do a little bit of the colouring to show you. So I'm going to colour the whole flower first of all in my petal pink, light petal pink, whichever way you want to say it, marker. I always use the bullet tip. I hardly ever use the brush tip, but obviously you can use whichever one you prefer. And with these blends, you want to lay down plenty of ink because you want that ink to still be wet when you come in with the darker marker. And all I'm doing is I'm following the lines. It's almost like an etching. Following the lines that have been included in the stamped image. So I'm going over those with my darker marker. Now normally I would now come back in with the light one and blend, but I'm actually, these are such pale colours, I'm actually not blending out that dark because as it dries it seems to blend itself because the colours are so pale. So I'll just do one more. So I'm going back to the light one. Always make sure that you rest on some scrap paper. I've obviously got my grid paper when you use the blends because they will soak through to the other side. And if you're working on your precious wooden dining room table, you definitely don't want permanent ink on it. So again, I'm laying down lots of ink so that it's wet still when I come in with the darker colour, and I'm just going over those little lines, and where the petals kind of curl over at the sides I'm also colouring those little tiny sections in with my dark marker. But I'm not doing anything difficult or clever. I'm just using the design that is there, and those stamens in the middle I'm going to colour in with the dark one. There we are. And then I'm going to make sure that I click the lids on because these are alcohol ink markers. They will evaporate. The ink will evaporate really, really fast if you leave them uncapped, even on a cold day. So I've now customised my paper, and I could have used any colours on this. You know, I could have used pinks or yellows, whatever colours I fancied. I'm not going to colour the strip for the inside. I'm going to leave that much more minimal. Let me show you the back actually. Can you see how that ink has come through? So that could easily have ended up on my table. Right, so I'm going to start off by gluing down my embossed card. Now I think this is going to be a little bit too long. When I'm embossing card, I usually cut it just a little bit longer than I need because quite often the embossing shrinks the card a little bit. And I'd rather have to trim a little bit off than not have quite enough and have my layer a bit short. So I usually add on about 1/8 of an inch. And you can see that this is definitely too long, but that's okay because that's easy to trim off. And then I'm going to put this really narrow piece on there next. I could glue on here, but I'm actually just going to run a very thin bead of glue down the side of this embossed card, almost as if I was ruling a line. I can rest the nib of my glue against the card, and then that just pops down there. And once again, it's slightly long because I cut it fractionally too long so that I can get an exact fit. because even when you're measuring everything, you often find that you are, a 1/64th of an inch, a tiny, tiny, tiny amount short if you're not careful. It's just human error and you know, just the errors that come in when you're measuring things, and I would rather trim a little bit off than have something with a little gap at the bottom. So that's my piece of paper that I've just coloured. Now if you don't have Stampin' Blends markers for colouring, you can use all sorts of other things. You could use watercolour pencils, ordinary colouring pencils if you have those. You could use Stampin' Right markers, those are the water-based markers. But my absolute favourite for colouring are Stampin' Blends, because you don't get any lines. You know how when you're colouring with ordinary felt pens you get those kind of pen lines and you try and colour really neatly so that they all at least run parallel. You just don't get those lines with the Stampin' Blends markers, so you get this beautiful even coloured finish. I really love them. So I'm gluing this in the middle of my card. I have some early espresso ink, so that's the same as my dark coloured card here that I'm going to stamp that thank you with. Not on that, that's my pattern paper. There we are, it's my white strip. Once again, I'm just going to snip that a little bit shorter. And then on this one, I'm going to run my darker pink marker just around the edge. So again, as if I was ruling a line and this piece of card was a ruler. And that will just give a very narrow pink border to the card and just give a little bit of contrast when I get it onto my project. Let me try and show you. I'm hoping that you can see the edging on that. Don't know if you can. Maybe just about. It's much easier to see in real life than it is on the camera, particularly this time of year when the light is difficult. It's not so bad for dark colours, but for light colours it's quite tricky. And when you add in artificial lights, unless you've got a fancy lighting system, which I do not have, you don't always get those pale colours showing as nicely as you would like. Okay, and now this time I'm going to pop this over to the edge, this left hand way, I think, because that's where, yeah, that looks good there. So for a little bit of bling, I've got some of the festive pearls. I've really loved using these, and actually I'm using them, as you can see, on projects that aren't festive projects. So the pale green ones in here are soft succulent green, which is the same colour that I've coloured my leaves. So these are perfect for that. And again, I'm just going to scatter a few around. I've got 5 here. I like to use odd numbers because that always looks better than if you use an even number. I don't know why, but it does. There we are. Let me lift that up and show you. Try and get it to the point where you can see it more clearly, but it's not completely out of the picture. Once again, you could do this with any kind of paper. You could use any embossing folder on here, or you could pick a different pattern of paper from your paper pack. But just use those measurements I gave you, and it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what colours you use, doesn't matter what papers you use. And if you do make anything from this presentation today, do pop a photo up. I would love to see it. You can make a comment under the video and add a photo of your project. People do that sometimes, and I'm always absolutely delighted to see what you come up with. Sometimes I even copy because you always have great ideas. All right, so let's get rid of that little bit of extra paper, and then I'm going to pop this inside, and our third card is done. And now, with any luck, I will have an opportunity to send these out after Christmas and say thank you. Been lucky enough to have a couple of presents given to be my customers, which I haven't opened yet, so they may well be the people that end up with the thank you cards this time. All right, let's spread out what I've made. Yes, you can still see them if I pop them up there, can't you? There we are. So 3 very different cards, made quick and easy by the fact that I've used patterned paper instead of doing a lot of stamping. I've given you the measurements, so hopefully you can reproduce these at home if you would like to, with whatever it is that you've got in your craft stash. You don't have to have the same as me at all. But I have really enjoyed doing them, and I also do like to know that I've got some cards handy, ready for when they're needed, so I don't have to delay my thank yous. Now I'm going to cover you up and bring you back up to see me. Let's just change the reverse camera. Hopefully I will come back in a minute. Ooh, looks very dark. What have I done? I bet I've hit that button. Yes, I have. There we go. Okay, I've got lights falling over in here. I've got all sorts happening. All right then, so let me just get rid of that. There we are. I had a fallen over light blinding me. So thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It's a busy time of year. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you for tuning in and watching later on. Maybe you're watching me on YouTube. Wherever you're watching me, it really helps if you can like this. If you feel like adding a comment, please do. The algorithms really love that. And if you're watching me on YouTube and you like what I do please subscribe, and that way you'll get told every time I upload a video. Thank you so much, Mary. A happy Christmas to you too. And of course, a happy Christmas to all of you. Please don't come back here next Friday because I will not be here. Come back instead on the 6th of January. That's the first Friday after New Year, when I will be really enjoying showing you some of my very favourite out of the new products. There are some beautiful things coming your way, so I don't think you're going to want to miss that. Have a wonderful Christmas, however you're spending it. Stay warm. I hope that you have a fantastic New Year celebration, and let's hope that 2023 continues some improvements. I think this year was better than last year, and let's hope next year is even better than this year. And until then, I will say bye-bye. Very happy Christmas to you all. Thank you for joining me.